Hey y'all, it's Kim. So I'm still digging into the Taylor Parker case. This is a ktlanews.com. I don't know if you can see that underneath, but it's a news conference with some of the investigators. Ugh, I wouldn't want to have walked into a scene like that. I don't know anybody that does, but unfortunately they had to deal with that. But anyway, I'm going to let this play. I mean, they're probably going to get more details than we probably want to know, but here we go.
That crime scene left an indelible mark with you both.
Yes.
You both have been doing it a very long time. So I want you to speak about that day and comb through what happened when the call came, and then what you all did next. And it's open to you just to describe the call, what came next, and whatever you feel.
Okay. All right. I was in the office and Chief Deputy McCarver come in the office and asked if we was available to assist New Boston. They advised us New Boston just had a homicide. And I told him yes, and at the time it was me and one Arkansas crime scene guy that was working that day. So we started heading to Boston, and once I got to New Boston, got out to find out what was going on, and they told me it was a female that apparently they thought had been beaten to death. So as I'm there, they told me that she was pregnant. And I thought, okay, so she's pregnant. And then next question was, well, how's the baby? Is the baby going to be able to be delivered or what? And they went in there and they come back and said, well, the baby's gone. And so my remark was, the baby is gone as in deceased or is gone as in gone?
Missing.
And they said, no, the baby is gone. The baby is missing. And as soon as they told me that, I mean, your mind starts running. We got to contact hospitals. We got to get officers. It sounds horrible, but we got to get officers starting to look at dumpsters near around and things like that. You start playing 1,000 scenarios through your head. And I did my initial walk through and see what I saw. And at that point, I knew I was going to need help. So I called my partner, Spencer. He was off on some medical leave for his wife. And I told him what I had. And I said, you don't have to come out. I said, but we're going to be here for a while. And so he come out to assist me. And then we called the other Arkansas crime scene person out too. So now we got 4 crime scenes. You got 2 Arkansas and 2 Texas. It was such a big scene. We called Arkansas for assistance, and they come helped us with it. New Boston talked to the chief. He said, once we seen this, we knew it was over our head. And he said, that's why your phone number's on our bulletin board. He said, that's why we called y'all, because we don't mind assisting other agencies, because we're the only dedicated crime scene unit in this area. So they called us, and we got there. And we started doing our initial walkthrough, and the first thing I noticed at the scene was a lot of bloody footprints, shoe prints, shoe impressions. And at that time, I told the responding officer, I want names, pictures, boot sizes of everybody that's been in the house, because I knew it may come down to shoe impression comparisons. At the time, we didn't know what we had. You're running scenarios through your head, and you're thinking, well, boyfriend done it, husband found out that she was pregnant by somebody else, he done it. You start running all kinds of scenarios. And I even told the guys whenever we had our meeting, I said, 3 things can happen. I said, either the husband's the suspect, or she has a boyfriend. I said, or just some random psycho come and done it. And unfortunately, it was the third choice out of that. And so
random psycho.
We got there and took overall photographs at first. And then at the time I asked, do we have a search warrant to go into the house to do our thing? They said, no, we have consent. And I said, consent's not going to work in this situation, because to me, your number one suspects right now is the husband. Who gave you consent? Well, the husband did. Well, that's not going to work. And so then we had to stop and wait for the search warrants. And that's whenever I called Spencer and said, look, it takes a couple hours to get a search warrant and things like that. And so I called Spencer and he come up and helped me. And just going in, the shoe impressions, I got to looking at shoe impressions, and we determined there were two different style of shoe impressions. Okay, we had those two, and as we were starting to do our thing, then word come out that a state trooper had stopped a woman in DeKalb and
Texas,
had delivered a baby and was going to Idabel.
Oklahoma.
Well, we're thinking she's in DeKalb. Why wasn't she going to St. Michael's? Why wasn't she going to Mount Pleasant? Why Idabel? Mm-hmm. And it was a dispatcher that actually turned the detectives onto and said, hey, just a little while ago, we had a trooper said a woman delivered a baby on the side of the road. They started checking to that. Come to find out, it was Parker that had the baby and was heading to Oklahoma. And the reason she was heading to Oklahoma is because she's already burned bridges in St. Michael's and Mount Pleasant. She couldn't use either one of the hospitals because she's had a hysterectomy or a partial hysterectomy, and she couldn't have any children. And so once we found out it was an abduction of the child, then you kind of start honing in on, okay, now what do we look for? Is this an abduction of somebody that come in the house and took? You kind of start changing your mind and your theories a little bit about what's going on.
Plus, the husband was pretty much alibied out.
Yeah.
Been at work the whole entire time during the homicide, so we knew he was out. Like we were saying, as soon as he called me and told me of the case, I did the same thing. We go through the scenarios. And I had already had the same three scenarios. The whole entire time I'm driving to Boston, I'm thinking, how many deputies and troopers can I pull to go start searching every roadway, dumpster in the area to try to find the child? Because typically, it's either one of two things. Either they take the baby to take for themselves, or they're taking it to dispose of the baby. So we are going through that scenario. And like you said, I was actually medical leave with my wife, and she actually gave me a very mean look for actually agreeing to go to the case. But I knew the complexity of the case was going to be, it needed to be done.
So when we got the search warrants and everything, and we get inside the residence, you kind of just step back and you kind of just you let the scene talk to you. And it kind of sounds corny, but it's blood tells you a lot of things. Okay, and so you sit back and you look, and we're looking at blood. There's blood everywhere.
Oh my God.
There was a bloody jar in the kitchen. There was a bloody jar full of sand in the living room. There was.
What do you mean a bloody jar? There was so much blood that blood was overflowing into a jar.
It was okay. Yeah, it was mason jars.
Okay.
It was actually from their wedding. You know how you pour the sand into the mason jars for a wedding?
Okay.
One of them was empty, and the other one had the sand in it. I believe the one in it was about 4 pounds, I think is what
I'd have to look at it again.
I can't
4
recall.
or 5 pounds worth of sand.
It was a
heavy weight.
And when I say blood was on it, I'm talking blood transfer from like a hand onto it.
Okay, gotcha.
And looking
And
at her, and spatter and things like that. And looking at the blood on that, then it was like, well, she was beaten with one of these jars. We once we started looking at the body, she had an indentation on her head that we knew come from a jar, probably come from a jar with sand in it because it's a heavier object. And when we first started looking, we had blood everywhere. So our first initial thought was this woman fought for her life. She fought this suspect, this person come in, she fought. That was our first hypothesis, but once we started the investigation and started looking at things, and once Taylor Parker was arrested, she had no injuries on her. So that indicates to us her fingernails are broken, the victim's fingernails are broken, and things like that. She was covering up. She was ambushed. She was hit. She's covering up the whole time, and she's being beaten with something. She's been beaten in the back of the head. She was fingers were broke. She's got bruising on her arms, but she was just taking a beating, and she's covering up. Well, we got blood in the kitchen, and we got blood in the living room, and we got blood at the front door. And
So this is happening everywhere in the house. She's running away
Yes.
while she's
She's trying to
doing
escape the assault, and
she got assaulted right at the door at the kitchen,
Yes.
in the garage door. Whenever she was assaulted, I believe she was hit in the back of the head with an object, either a hammer or a crowbar. And it takes more than one hit to start blood spatter. The first hit lacerates the skin. So whenever she was hit, she starts bleeding. And we had blood on the refrigerator that was blood spatter from hair. You could tell it was from hair. Where she went down, she got up, she tried to run out the front door, was attacked at the front door, brought back in the living room, and then she was brutally attacked there. Up against the wall, we had the blood spatter on the wall. You could pretty much, with the blood, look at everywhere she had been. And I'll never forget, we're sitting there, we're looking at it, and we weren't saying a word to each other. We're just looking because we're just trying to soak everything in because there's so much. And I looked at my partner and I said, she was alive when that baby was taken.
Oh.
And he says, I think you're right. And the reason we come to that conclusion was because of the blood and the absence of blood. We could tell by the blood spatter and the blood stains where she was at when the baby was fully removed. She was on her back when we got there. And we knew she had been moved because of the blood. So one of our first questions is who moved the body? Well, nobody knew who moved the body because it was such a traumatic thing. Nobody could remember. So we played video back, and it was the EMT, the paramedic that come in. He pulled her over to check for the baby. And you could see him. He looks and he stands up. And you can see the look on his face, and he looks back down. And that's when he sits back up and he goes, that baby's gone. So she was on her back, but she died on her stomach, and the blood told us that. So that was an indication to us that she was still alive, because you're not going to get a baby out of somebody with them laying on their stomach, you know. So once that baby was pulled from her, which she fought for, as she was walking off, you could tell she was trying to go after her and then died on the floor.
And that's what, when I mentioned that this case had a profound impact on us. We're both parents. We could just imagine the terror she went through knowing she's dying and this person is taking her child. I couldn't imagine that. I mean, that everyone in our unit were parents. So that's what bugged us the most, and that what left a psychological impact on us was that knowing that fact and knowing that she's alive during this. The
horror that she was going through during that whole altercation. So go ahead.
And we were plenty of murders where they fought for their lives or stuff like that, and they went through terror as well. But like I said, a new parent losing their child this way and not knowing what's going to happen to that child, it's unfathomable for us.
And she put up every, and the reason we know that she had struggled and tug of war with a baby is one of her broken fingernails. She had like press-on nails, and we found 3 at the house, and we were missing one. Well, that fingernail was found in the uterus of the child whenever they recovered the uterus. So she was pulling hard enough for her to lose a nail. So now we know we've got somebody in there, and we know from experience what we have got to do. We got to determine how many suspects. How many? Was it one person? Was it 2 people? Was it 3 people that come in here and done that? Well, looking at the scene, it was obvious to us with the blood and the things at the scene that it was just a single person. It was a single person that committed this crime. And the reason we can confidently say that is because at the scene, we had 2 different types of shoe impressions. Okay. So you're going to assume one is suspects, one is victims. Well, as we start doing these shoe impressions with this, I say shoe impressions, they're blood impressions of shoe prints. You know, walking in blood, and they're transferring that blood all over the floor. And we only had 2 different types of shoes. Well, we found out that Taylor Parker, when she was arrested, was wearing a pair of Crocs. those Crocs were shown to the victim's mother. The victim said, "Those are my daughter's Crocs." She said, "I bought those Crocs for her. Those are her." Those were there at the house. So during all this altercation, Taylor Parker's wearing a pair of shoes, or sandals is what she was wearing because of the shoe impression. She was wearing sandals. And then after she got the baby and all that, and she left, she cleaned up and she took
Reagan's
the victim's shoes to put them on to leave.
Mhm.
So the shoe prints that belonged to the victim was actually Taylor Parker walking around the house after she was deceased, walking through blood and cleaning up and things like that. We knew one was a Croc. The other one we didn't know, and we searched and searched and searched for the type of pattern that it was, and we knew it was a sandal. The reason we knew it was a sandal was because we had her on video at an Easy Mart right before the murders, and she was wearing a white pair of sandals. So we're focused on sandals, and we searched for days and days and days.
And when he means search, we're actually going to shoe stores all around
Yes.
town, actually taking sandals, looking at the bottom of it, and having a photo of the shoe impression going, no, that's not a match.
Going on the internet, looking at images on the internet. Does this pattern type match up? So that pattern got instilled in my brain. And so I was in Fort Smith visiting my grandbabies, and I was walking through the house, and I looked down, and there was a sandal. My daughter's sandals were sitting over by the couch. And so I looked at them, I thought, So I went over and I picked it up, and as soon as I picked it up, I said, that's the design. And I went in there, I said, "Where did you get these sandals?" She goes, "They're just sandals from Walmart." And so when I got back, I took pictures of it, and I told him, I said, "This is the brand of shoe." So we went to Walmart, and the year before is when they stopped that pattern on those sandals. So they were older sandals, and the new ones didn't have that.
Right.
So what we did is I got online on eBay and found a pair of sandals that looked just like the ones that was in our blood shoe print. So once I bought those off of eBay, and when I got them, we brought them to work, and we called life share
Life
out
The
here.
blood bank.
Yeah, the blood bank here in Texarkana. And we kind of told them, hey, we went by there. We didn't call them. We went by there and said, hey, look, do y'all have any old expired blood or anything like that? Because this is the reason. And we told them about the case, which they already knew about it. And we told them we're trying to replicate the shoe impression. And they said, we'll get in touch with you. So out of Shreveport, they called us from Shreveport. They said, we heard y'all needed some blood. And we told them, they said, we will help you 100%. We've got some old blood. She goes, it's tested blood. It's just expired. We can't give it to nobody. So they send us a couple of pints of blood. And so we go into our lab, and now we start trying to replicate the shoe impressions. We went to Lowe's. We bought the same type of tile that was in the floor at Lowe's, and took it into our lab and set it down. We had our female partner from Arkansas side slip the sandals on, step in the blood, and walk, and we could replicate those same type of shoe patterns that was in that. So, and those type of sandals they sell in white. So we finally got that down. So now we know it was a Croc in this sandal here, and it was. And if you look at the blood, we could tell that some of it she had been walking around carrying something bloody, a towel, the baby, or whatever, because you had blood drops on top of that. And we'll be able to show you some of that where it hit and to indicate that, yeah, she was walking around in these shoes carrying something that was bloody.
And I think in Taylor Parker's mind, she thought the assault would be like on TV. I hit her in the head once, she'll go down unconscious. I can do what I need to do and be done and out of here. She didn't realize it takes a lot more than that to knock somebody out effectively. And like he said, we originally thought it was a knockdown, drag out fight. Then come to find out it wasn't. There's still a lot of things that we never recovered. We never recovered Taylor's actual shoes.
We never recovered
Hammer or whatever.
Or crowbar or whatever
She
it
used to beat
was.
on her. We never recovered that.
Cell phones. Never found the cell phones. Never found the victim's cell phone. Never found
Taylor's.
one of, they had some
Yes.
of Taylor's, but not one hers they didn't find. She had several different cell phones because she would she would text herself being somebody else.
Mhm.
You know, and that's what's amazing. And you know, we brought up the husband earlier because that's going to be one of your first primary suspects. And one of the things that we had to battle in court is people couldn't believe that the husband didn't know about it.
Mhm.
And like
Taylor's husband?
Taylor's husband, yeah, that Taylor's the suspect's husband couldn't have known about it. And so they would have had to know that she was pregnant. Well, people don't understand. She bought a prosthetic belly. She had a prosthetic belly. She had bought sonograms. She had bought all this stuff. And you can go online, fakeapregnancy.com, and you can buy everything you need to make somebody think that you're pregnant. And this guy thought she was pregnant. And she was texting herself because they have a hog farm and they sell hogs. She told her husband, look, I'm going to Idabel because they're going to do a C-section to take this baby. He said, well, I'm going with you. She said, well, you can't. He says, well, why not? She said, remember, we've got to sell these hogs to this guy that was, what, 3 hours away. 3 hours away, you got to go sell these hogs. And he said, well, I'll go sell the hogs, then I'll come to the hospital. She said, perfect. I think in her mind, two things going to happen. She either had the baby or she lost the baby. So the husband gets to the farm and drives up and tells the farmer guy, hey, man, I'm here. He goes, why are you here? He said, well, I brought these hogs that you've been wanting. He says, I'm not buying any hogs. I don't want any hogs. And come to find out, she had been texting herself back and forth, showing him this hog sale, but she's the one doing all of it to get him 3 hours away so she could go try to have this baby. It was all planned out.
Orchestrated.
Not to mention, she befriended other pregnant women that were all similar in due dates. So she had backup plans that if she couldn't get to this one, she'd get to the others. And unfortunately, it's just Reagan that was found, and became the victim of it.
And it's just, you know, the impact that it has had on us, like we say, you know, it's something that'll never be forgotten. And I made the statement standing right there in the living room. I told him, I said, you know, I'm through saying I've seen it all. Because every time I say I see it all,
somebody else does something else.
I said, so I've taken that out of my vocabulary. I no longer use that.
Because fetal abduction murders are so rare. I actually looked it up, and I think there's only 2 reported cases in the year 2020. One in Brazil and one in New Boston, Texas. That's how rare these kind of cases are. So, like you said, we try not to jinx ourselves, and we have seen quite a bit. Some really messed up cases, different types of scenarios. And now we can actually say we actually investigated one of those. And like you said, I really don't want to work another one like it ever again. It's one and done. But
the brutality that was done, I mean, she was beaten with objects. She was beaten with a 4-pound mason jar full of sand. And she was sliced. She was cut. Matter of fact, the scalpel type knife, at one time, a blade broken in the victim's neck. It was still in there.
Yeah.
She was cut literally from, and I testified in court on this. I showed a photograph of a cut from back behind the ear that come all the way to right about here. And one of the things I pointed out in court is I believe that was one of the last ones of making sure that she is deceased. I believe she was on her stomach. I believe she walked up to her, raised her head, started here, and cut, because all this big cut was what we call a post-mortem incised wound. There was no blood in that wound. I had the incised wound up here where she was cut in the face. I could show the court what the blood looks like in the skin and on the fatty tissue. Here, I could show them how clean it was. And when it's clean like that, it's post-mortem because there's no longer any blood. And then she was cut from one hip to the other. She did not really, the baby and the uterus and all that was pretty well intact.
Yeah, the baby was not injured.
Okay.
The baby died pretty much because of
the sudden removement of the
traumatic extraction is the term the medical examiner used. It's mainly the mom was bleeding out so massively at that point that you're also denying that baby that blood flow. So it just wasn't going to survive outside after that much trauma too. And I've heard people try to dog on the state trooper that pulled her over, saying, "Oh, he should have known that wasn't her baby." So, speaking from experience as an officer, if I pull over a woman and she's had a baby in her arms, and she says she delivered it on the side of the road, I'm not going to doubt it at first.
Until you
And
investigate it.
she went through some extremes to actually try to make it look like she gave birth. And it wasn't until she got to the hospital and the doctors actually confirmed, said, "Nope, you never gave birth." And she, even to that time, she's still lying to Oklahoma police saying, "No, it's my baby. I gave birth to it." Even after the doctor told her, "No, it's not medically possible," until she finally started giving up a little bit here and there.
And when the trooper pulled her over, she actually had the umbilical cord stuck down
In her
in her
pants.
pants.
Yes.
So the trooper had no, you walk up, she's holding the baby. Okay, so what are you gonna do? You're gonna get an ambulance. That's all you can do.
Yeah.
You can't do anything else. But luckily, I think he was gonna pull her over because she was speeding, and then she called 911 asking for help. I just had a baby on the side of the road. And that's why it was like back to back. She knew that, hey, I'm fixing to get stopped, and she was just another part of the plan.
She planned out quite a bit. I don't think she is as smart as a lot of people think on certain aspects of it, but she did plan out a lot of good detail. How she kept her lies straight is unbelievable to me. And she's even fooled other officers before.
Oh yeah, yeah. She's fooled a lot of people.
Yeah.
But one person she didn't fool was Kelly Crisp, our prosecutor. She did an excellent job, and I don't know if we would have gotten the death penalty if she was not the prosecutor. The way she prosecuted that case, the amount of time and effort she put into that, she knew that this woman could not ever see the light of day again because she would do something like this again.
Oh,
There's
yeah.
no doubt in my mind that she would do something like this again because she was just so manipulative and things like that. It was just it was an amazing job on their part too to get the conviction that we were hoping for.
And Taylor also messed it up with, she had other inmates write letters of confession to being there during the crime, and what she inadvertently did was she's actually putting truth in there,
And some truth.
but she was also deflecting it as she claimed, who was it, Kodiak?
Some
gang member named Kodiak actually did the murders, and she was just there. Well, there's one part in her letter she wrote that at some point Kodiak heard something at the front door of the house. So he looked out a window to see if somebody's outside. The problem with that is we could prove that actually happened. There was actually a bloody partial handprint right by a window by the front door. So inadvertently, she's saying someone else did it, but it's really her doing it. She's deflecting it. Mm-hmm. And that's how we were able to explain, well, that bloody handprint was Taylor. She's peeking out the window because she's hearing some ruckus outside and she's thinking, oh crap, they're after me now. Mm-hmm. And she did that on quite a few of her revisions of her story.
Yeah, she gave 3 or 4.
She'd give a little bit of fact here and there that we could prove through the crime scene evidence that she didn't realize we'd catch her on it.
You speak of the time that the prosecutor put in. What about the time you guys put in? How long were you at that scene initially? How many days did you go back to that scene? Or kind of get in, encapsulate all of that.
There was 4 of us working. So you got 4 individuals working one scene. We were there for 13 hours,
something like that.
13 or 14 hours working that scene. We left there
10 or
11 o'clock that night. Of course, had to be back at work at 8 o'clock in the morning. And it dominated all of our time, not including the time that I put in off duty looking for shoes and, just trying to piece things together. I couldn't begin to tell you how many man hours it took.
Hours in the lab combing through every piece of evidence, because what people don't realize is all the evidence we collect that scene, we have to photograph again, we have to document it, we have to go through it with a fine-tooth comb a lot. And
categorize everything. We have to go to Swiss in Dallas, get everything that was removed from the bodies there. Any kind of evidence that we turn into a lab, we've got to take it to Garland, Texas, to the state crime lab. I did a trip with the prosecutors to the medical examiner's office so we could specifically talk to the medical examiners and the assistants that actually worked that case. That is the time I found out that she was hit in the back of the head with a hammer or a crowbar, because that information never was relayed to us. And with that information, then you can start tying up some loose ends, thinking, okay, this is why this is here, this makes sense, and things like that.
Because we're kind of behind the curve when we're assisting in their agency. Sometimes we don't get all the information passed back to us. And because it was not just me, Boston police working it, Texas Rangers were involved. So there's a couple times that information didn't get fully informed back to us until getting closer to trial time. That's when we started getting more info.
More information.
Okay, this now fits what we're seeing. If we would have known that earlier, we would have figured it out.
How many pieces of evidence are we talking that you guys process?
I should have brought that.
I got the phone.
You got copies?
If you know offhand, I mean, we're talking hundreds, we're talking thousands.
No, we're talking.
Under 100.
Okay. Yeah, it was under 100.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because at the scene, there's really, you have a lot of blood, but really, other than the jars that we knew of, the fingernails and things like that, we did collect a blanket that was in the floor because we didn't know if it was used to cover the child or what, if the blanket was even used. Was it in the floor when the incident started? Did she use it to try to soak up some blood? We didn't know, so we took that. So it wasn't a whole lot of a lot of physical type evidence as far as that's concerned. Of course, we go over and above trying to collect DNA.
Fingerprints, we processed
everything
areas.
for fingerprints. We had a bloody partial print on the wall.
Okay.
Cut the wall out to see, but we couldn't never identify that print of matching it up to either Taylor or anybody else. We couldn't identify it at all.
Were Taylor's fingerprints found at the scene?
No.
They were not. Okay.
The problem a lot of people don't understand about fingerprints is they think just because you simply touch something, your fingerprint's going to be on there and you can identify it.
Right.
That's not true. There's a lot of times that your fingerprints will go through motion, which will cause a smearing action,
Sure.
Especially bloody fingerprints are smearing everywhere. Then you can have the phenomenon of overlays where you have a fingerprint over another fingerprint over another fingerprint. And it's possible to try to find them identifiable, but it's very, very difficult. And we tried all techniques. We used chemicals on the blood stains to try to enhance them. Just couldn't ever get a good identifiable fingerprint to match to anyone. Even the victim, Reagan's fingerprints, we really didn't find in the house.
In her own house.
Yeah.
And we probably did more experimental things on this case, like with the shoe impressions and the blood and fingerprinting things differently on this case than we have others because of the uniqueness of it, and just trying to get as much evidence as you can to prove. But like I said, we didn't even get the victim's fingerprints from the house, no foreign DNA or anything. So that was kind of gets a little disheartening, but everything else.
Because if I remember correctly, Taylor's DNA wasn't even found.
No, we didn't see. Wasn't even found. No, so she was definitely ready. She probably had gloves on.
Gloves on, hair tied back, all of it.
Long sleeves, where she got scratched or something.
Sure, yeah.
Hey.
We did find hair in the victim's right hand.
Okay.
And then we thought, good, she pulled, because we thought she was fighting for her life. Thought she done pulled some of the suspect's hair. Come to find out, it was her own hair because she's covering up and she's been beaten. And she's just pulling her own hair out.
Yeah.
Oh, and we forgot to mention the 3-year-old was home.
The 3-year-old was at the house when all this occurred, and there was a diaper right there in the middle blood, like she had changed the child.
I don't think that ever actually truly happened.
I don't think it happened. Yeah, I don't think that happened. She may have got the diaper for the little one at first, because once she got the baby out, she placed the baby on the couch, and you could tell that by the fluids that was on the couch. But the baby, the 3-year-old, she had sent her back to her room. But she already seen what was going on. We had an incident that one of our old partners showed up next day or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
And she was one of our crime scene partners at one time. She was working for a different agency at the time, and she had brought a dog. They had bought a dog from her, and she heard this happen, and the husband called her and said, "Look, I can't take this dog because of this incident." So she come over to get the dog, and she told us, the 3-year-old asked her, "Do you know my mama?" And she says, "Yeah, I sure do." She said, "Are you not going to hurt her like the other woman did?"
Oh my
So
God.
she seen, of course, she had to reassure her that no, she wasn't, so the child was in there, and that's another thing that kind of sticks with you, the trauma that occurred to that child, and the family itself. I mean, it's just unfathomable. It's unbelievable that somebody would
Do
do
that.
something like this.
Because Reagan's mom found her, so she had to see that. And then her stepdad, I think the stepdad was in there.
There's one when he got the child out of the house. So I mean, it's tragic. It's horrific. It'll never leave my mind. As long as I have a sound mind in this business, I may not have a sound mind for long, but it's you don't wish it on anybody, and being the crime scene guys, that's the way we look at everything in life. We see these incidences with mass shootings and all that, and the first thing we think about is those crime scene guys. I mean, that would be, if we had something like that happen, how would we work it? How would we do this? And in law enforcement, we're always learning. Unfortunately, we're in the business of reacting. So if something bad happens, like the Columbine shooting, those police officers got all kinds of scorn and in trouble by their actions. But at the time in law enforcement, they did exactly how they were trained. You set up perimeters, you wait for your big boys, your SWAT team to get there, things like that. After that incident, now you start looking at things differently. Now we know, okay, you can't set up a perimeter. If there is a shooter in a target-rich environment, you go straight on, and you put yourself between that shooter and the targets, because then there's fixing to be a fight. And I promise you, I'm better trained than you are, and I'm fixing to win that fight. So now everything changes. So whenever we see incidents happen throughout the United States or overseas or whatever, we look at crime scenes. We get a lot of crime scene information, and we start thinking, okay, if this happens here, this is how we need to handle this. So things are always changing, especially in crime scene. Technology is changing every day. And so we kind of got to try to stay up with the technology and events to try to continue to learn.
I'm going to start with you, Spencer, with this, but the questions for both of you would answer individually on it. Does this case haunt you? Does this case pop into your thought process? How often do you think about the events of this case? Is it something that, you'll be getting coffee somewhere and all of a sudden it just pops in your brain?
I think at this point in my career, they don't really pop as much in my head, especially since this case has been done for 3 years now. We've had other cases that fill the void in that time frame. Now, there are times that I might sit there and think about when I had my daughter, and I might think of just having a glimpse of a thought of the terror she went through. Also, a local Christmas parade of lights venue here in town, or actually out in New Boston, took my family out there one day. We're driving through, and they started having signs of in memory of Michael Page, a fellow deputy that was killed in the line of duty. Okay, that's cool. And then I see a sign saying in memory of Reagan Hancock and Braxton Hancock. I'm like, my wife was like, well, who's that? I said, that's the New Boston murder victims. And that just, as soon as you hear the names, it floats back to you. And then sometimes we'll have people just randomly ask, well, you are a crime scene. Did y'all do that New Boston one? Yeah. And as soon as you bring it to our mind, we start thinking about it. Yeah. And we use it also as a teaching material, because we also train other agencies on crime scene. And because it's a unique case, we present it as, okay, here's what we got. Do y'all see anything wrong with it? Are y'all seeing what we're seeing? So these newer officers will understand the complexity and stuff like that. At this point, like me and Mark have discussed before, we're so far in our career that I guess we could say we're kind of damaged on the normal human seeing that would just have ungodly nightmares and terrors about it. We've seen stuff like this so much that it really doesn't bother me much anymore. I don't effectively lose sleep anymore over it. It still affects, it still hurts, but it's to the point where we don't constantly harp on it or think about it. Now, our junior guy in the crime scene unit at that scene, you could tell it bothered him. He kept wanting to talk about the case. And we were constantly like, once we're done with it, let's move on. Let's focus on other ones. Because we don't want to keep dragging up these kind of cases.
Yeah. And for me, over the years, I've gotten really good at compartmentalizing things that happen. So I haven't lost any sleep because I can compartmentalize. But the problem is that comes at a detriment to me as an individual. I've lost a lot of empathy. I've lost a lot of emotions and things like that because of my career in this business. Whenever you hear a friend or a family member that has passed away, and you're like, okay, well, what are we gonna do now? You know, you start to, it's almost like, am I becoming like I'm not human because of the amount of trauma and devastation that we have seen. I've been doing crime scene since 2002. So that's over 20 years just in crime scene. So I've seen a lot in crime scene. And then you start thinking, well, are we damaged goods? I know emotionally, where am I? Because I don't feel emotion. You know, everything is compartmentalized so much that whenever you go into a scene like that, we know that, okay, this body's laying here, that body's evidence. And we've got to speak for that body there. And so we look at things as evidence. What can this body tell us? And you have to put it behind, you have to put that wall up whenever you're doing that. You can't work it and say, she was pregnant, she was a mother, she's a mother to this child, she's a wife, you start adding the human aspects into it, and it will really start messing with you. But yes, things come up that are reminders that remind, and you go right back, flashes of that scene, of all the amount of blood, of everything that you witnessed and that you've seen. Things do pop up, but I don't lose sleep. I've been blessed enough not to be able to lose sleep and be able to kind of keep things separated. I try not to take things home, but my wife can tell you that there's times when I come home and she'll just kind of back off because she knows, you know, either by my facial expressions or the way I'm moving or talking, that, okay, he's had a rough one. She's there if I want to talk, she's there. But when we first got married, she said, how did it work to go today? It was okay. So what'd you do? You never tell me what you did. I said, okay. I said, what I did today is I had the death of a 2-year-old that was beaten to death. And she, oh. She said, okay. She goes, I fully understand, but just know I'm here to talk if you're willing to talk. So I'm blessed with a wife that will listen to me, not harp on me. And she knows whenever I'm at that point, let's just give him some time and he'll come back to me. But there are times that you just kind of separate. There's times that I want to go home and I just want to sit, nobody talk to me, nobody bother me. I don't want to go to no events around people. I just want to be, you know, and that happens quite a bit.
Aspect of it though is a lot of people don't realize in this line of work, our families take a punishment and beating on this too, because they're having to deal with our emotional responses. Like you said, sometimes my wife has actually made a comment that I appear cold sometimes. I'm sorry. You know, we've been conditioned to the point of, like you said, when we show up and we see a body, that's evidence. I can't sit here and dwell on thinking that's a daughter or a sister or somebody. Like it would drive me insane.
Yeah.
So we see it as evidence and evidence only. That's always the biggest question we always get when they ask us about our job is, how do you deal with the dead bodies? We don't see them, unfortunately, we don't see them as human at that point. We can reflect on that later on.
Yeah.
But at the moment, we can't.
And we know, they're humans or somebody's dad,
Yeah.
father, son, whatever. We understand that. But when you go into it, you can't go into it with that mentality. You got to go into it. This is evidence. We're here to do a job. That person, that body is speaking, and we got to be the ones to hear it. So.
Anyway, just thought I'd pull that video up. I found that on Chat GPT because I was actually looking for other things. But anyway, I will talk to y'all later. I mean, it's just disgusting, y'all. But anyway, I will talk to y'all sometime later. Let me get this stopped here. See y'all. Bye.